Hello. So today I stepped out. I walked a certain distance. I had to, get certain things done, buy a few things. I stepped out from quite a long time of homestay. And the point I'm making here is I walked a bit with my mask on, and then I walked a little distance without my mask, because I'm not so used to wearing the mask all the time when I'm staying at home, you see. And I noticed what reminded me of to put my mask back on is I started having sniffles. And that's when I, was reiterated that we are just very, very much in the COVID season. So I had my hand sanitizer. I used some of that on my hand. And I also dabbed some on my nose so that, I've tended to do this, inhaling a little bit of the alcohol sanitizer, because I thought that does something to, prevent any infection which may have gone to my nose. I don't know how safe that is, but I thought that has a certain quick vaporizing effect. I did that. And then I went to one of the shops and I was talking to them. And I noticed that my sniffles were increasing and I was coughing a little bit. And that's when I remembered reading about, what are the symptoms of getting an infection. I also remember that a few months back, very close to when the COVID season started, I was traveling in a train, full of, a lot of people, and there was all this fear of infection and all of that. So in a crowded place, not knowing, nobody's able to see the virus. So how did I notice that I may be going off my healthy center is when my senses were getting fogged. I couldn't smell as well. My nose was tending to get a little blocked. And what I would do, what I call as a namaste for health. So I would do this, and this is sort of balances between my left and right sides. What I do is I bring my attention so that my one hand is very well touching and syncing with the other hand, so that I feel that each finger has helloed, like say hello to the other finger in a perfect match. Yeah, it takes a little while before the nervous system of both the hands come together, so that it's comfortably there without repelling or opposing each other, but just comfortably be able to be there, particularly to feel that one palm is touching the other palm. And then I bring my attention between the outer edge of the smaller finger of both palms and the outer edge of the thumb of both palms. The range between the outer edge and the outer edge of the thumb. And then I see that there is a balance between these outer edges and between the left and the right palms. Yeah, right up to the fingertips and the wrist base. So that's like a whole body syncing in terms of nervous system. So when I did this mindfully, I would notice that my senses would clear, because I was also noticing how my breathing is affected when I do this. It sort of has a nice healthy effect on my breathing. Now this is when I was in the train, yeah, and that would help clear out a lot of fog. It's like a quick exhaust fan. It sort of clears the energy of me, and then I could think again. And after some time, I would just let go, and again I would notice after some time a certain fog setting in. And then I would again do this, so a little exhaust. So that's how I train and travel in the train. Then I also had my hand sanitizer all the time. So that was when I was in the train. Now here I'm on the road, walking. And I have used my hand sanitizer. I did not do the namaste because it did not occur to me that I thought, now I could do a certain body namaste, like without having to do it with my hand. I could bring attention between the left and right sides, front and back, top and bottom. I call it as a body namaste. So I came to the shop. I was talking and I was already beginning to cough a little bit. And then I noticed I was beginning to get a little restless. And I also remember reading somewhere that this is one of the signs that you may be infected. And then that's when I remembered to do my body namaste, because I was like a little confident that I can manage. I can go home, I can do a little bit of this and I'll be fine. I thought. And here I was in this shop and I was going through this irritated, restless kind of a thing. And that's when I noticed something is off. So I stepped back from speaking to the person in the shop, and what I did is I brought my attention to my breath. Now, why am I saying this is maybe this is going to help somebody else too. Yeah. So what I did is I brought my attention to my breath. I noticed the restlessness happening, and I brought my attention to the air going into my body and out, and particularly I brought attention to the warmth in my body and paid more attention to sense of relaxation in my breath, because I was tending to feel restless, that I want to do something. I just want to, it's more like it seemed like a fight beginning. And I paid more attention to the sense of relaxation and regularization between my left and right, between the breath going into my body and out. But more I was staying at the sense that I can breathe and I'm fine. I was paying more attention in my bodily sensation that I can breathe. I was only focusing on being able to breathe. And when I only brought my attention to the sense that I can breathe, my breath deepened. And when my breath deepened, my diaphragm started to work. There was a natural deepening of breath. The region at my solar plexus was more less tense. It's like the solar plexus is a mass of nerves, you see, and there is a circulatory system, and there's so much of autoimmune responses there, yeah, between the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. So when I brought attention to my sense that I can breathe, and to the sense of relaxation when I was in my breath, the restlessness came down, my breath deepened, and my lungs were expanding more. And then I stayed with that sense, but particularly what I did is, in breathing in and out, there was a sense of a tension between the in-breath and an out-breath, which was giving rise to the restlessness. So while my breath was deepening, there was a certain, let's just say it's a tension between life and death. Now, this sounds very dramatic. The point is, there was a certain distress in my breathing, because of which I needed to bring more my attention to the fact that I can breathe, paying attention to how I am breathing rather than I can't breathe. And then there was a moment where I was humbled, where I brought my attention to the humility there is that I can breathe. And that's when there's a certain different dynamic started in my body, wherein the distress in and of itself gave way to expanded breathing. And that's when I had a sense that I will be fine, where I was humble enough, where I was humbled in the sense of being able to breathe. It's not an arrogance that I can breathe, but more to how much a breath is between life and death. How much breath maintains the connection between life and death, and how my breath is like is just secondary to the fact that I'm alive. That my breathing is more like a grant, a sanction by an honor of life and death, of an honor of death as which is just possible if I don't breathe, or if I can't breathe in a particular way, then death is just there. So why am I saying this is because I'm trying to explain a certain experience, a certain surrendering to the fact of the breathing, the fact of how breathing is a bridge between life and death. And then what happened is, then there was a sense of the tension slightly giving way. And then after some time, I was able to breathe. Some parts of my sympathetic nervous system was not so much in jaggernauts. It was not in so much of tension with my parasympathetic. And after some time, my diaphragm inside, it's not just about my solar plexus, but just above it, my diaphragm, the central part of the diaphragm began to be less tense and began to breathe a little more. And after some time, what happened is there was a release of tension here, and there was a release of tension in the region of my skull. Like, if you go to a Japanese restaurant, they would give you the seaweed paste. Like after eating a meal, when you have a little bit of that seaweed paste, you will find a certain, it's like to give you to me, the sense was a little nuclear bomb just burst and air just goes out of my skull sutures, so it all sort of clears my head. So it was that kind of a sense. There was a certain release, because I was tending to sort of scratch my head because that was a kind of restlessness that was there. So once I started breathing more consciously, conscientiously, my lungs began to expand in a particularly different way. There was a release of tension. And then there was a certain release in the region of my head. And then I didn't want to scratch so much. When I stepped out of that shop, I was again moving to another shop because there's some work to be done. I noticed that the sniffles came down. I was not coughing as much. I was not feeling dry. And I continued in the mindfulness of this breathing. I came home. I washed my hands. I'm more locked down here, but I have a sense that I'm okay. I don't have the sniffles. My breath is not distressed. And I have a distinct sense that I'm alive. How this benefits another a viewer? Does this make sense? Do you find a solution? Does this bring an insight on what may be needed by which we can maintain being healthy? Maybe there's a method of staying alive, which may come handy maybe in recognizing when you may be going out of your healthy centeredness, or what you could possibly do by which you could recognize that you're coming back into health, that you're not in a life threat in terms of your respiratory system. I don't know. But there is definitely that humility that acknowledges stepping beyond that arrogance of life, that being arrogant in the face of that you have life, and just stepping back from it and being in humility of the fragileness of the power that death has over life. It's not a tactic, but it's an acknowledgement of a fact that needs to be remembered as we go about our daily activities, so that we honor life and death. Thank you for your attention. I hope this brings some insight. This helps you in some way. I will keep trying to see in what way I will be able to help through my work, through my enterprise. I hope this one keeps you safe in honor of life and death, honor of life and what needs to be preserved. Namaste.